Alright, so today we're going to be looking ahead at the 2025 wide receiver class, and there will be plenty of videos to come on the rest of these prospects in this class and in the wide receiver class specifically, but we begin today with the consensus 4 top wide receivers in this class. We've got Luther Burden III and Tetairoa McMillan, and these are considered the two to look out for, the top two. People's wide receiver 1 in this class generally is one of these two. And then you've got a couple of really interesting prospects after that in Emeka Egbuka, who would have been in this conversation for the 2024 class, but got injured, had ankle surgery in the year. And then you've got Travis Hunter, who we're going to be looking at as both a wide receiver in this. I'm going to be ranking him purely as a wide receiver. And then in the next video, we're going to be looking at the cornerbacks, and he's going to be in that conversation. He's probably more likely to play as a cornerback in the NFL, but he does both in college. So let's get to the analysis and the ranking. So we'll start off with who I've got as wide receiver 4 out of these 4, and honestly I would assume that people jump him as I get to the rest of this class. I found Tetairoa McMillan's film was very underwhelming, and he is 6'5", 210, so you sort of already know the prototype you're looking at. He is dominant in contested catch situations. You see that on the film, you see that in the stats. 17 contested catches out of 34 is really impressive numbers, but I wasn't the biggest fan of Rome Odunze coming out of the 2024 class, and it was a similar conversation. McMillan leans even more into this sort of prototype, and I just don't think it works in the NFL. It's great being big, it's great being able to bring the ball in. For example, I'm a huge fan of guys like Drake London, T. Higgins, Michael Pittman, but the difference is they're all creating a bit of separation with route running, and their movement skills are special. It's the combination of their size and their movement skills that gets it done. I think he could use his physicality a bit more, like on a route like this, use this sort of push off. AJ Brown does this a lot. You can create separation a bit with your physicality if you do it with the right timing. But as of right now, all I'm seeing is McMillan running clunky routes, not really gaining separation on fairly weak competition most of the time, but then he's dominating with his size and his presence. He'll be getting locked up in the NFL. This is kind of a Keon Coleman all over again. I presume he'll have a similar sort of drop as the season goes on, when the scouts start watching and word gets around a bit that people in the know aren't so sure about his NFL potential. But yeah, as of right now, I've got him roughly listed as a round 3/round 4 type of guy. Moving on to my wide receiver 3 out of this lot, Emeka Egbuka. I mentioned had to have surgery in the middle of the year, so that screwed up his plans for 2024. He's a very similar prospect to Jackson Smith-Njigba, who came out of Ohio State a couple of years ago. For someone who's probably going to be a slot guy in the NFL, he's well built. He's about 205 pounds, 6'1". And this guy's just a very nuanced route runner. You can tell that he's coming out of Ohio State because he knows how to run the routes like an NFL receiver. He knows that it's not just about running the routes in the right place, but it's about setting the DB up. It's about showing his hips to the DB for a moment so that the DB has to stay planted before making his move. It's very subtle movements that make the difference, but ultimately he is never going to be a wide receiver 1. He doesn't have the speed, he doesn't have the real sudden route running. It's similar to Chris Olave, for example, where it's very smooth, or Jahan Dotson for the Commanders. It's very silky, but it's not sudden, and I'm a big fan of Jahan Dotson, but the skill set is very similar. Egbuka has very reliable hands, he's going to bring the ball in through traffic, but he just doesn't have the traits to make me think he should be a round 1 receiver, and so he sort of is what he is. He's not going to develop over the year because he's already very polished. And now we get on to Luther Burden III, who again I was very underwhelmed by. He's made it to number 2 out of this 4 because the 2 guys behind him were fairly underwhelming to me. He is dynamic, he is well built, he's a legit yak threat. That's really his main thing, is that I guess people think of him as a weapon. He's definitely explosive, he can definitely make a guy miss. My issue is with the route running and the separation he isn't creating with the route running. Most of his production is against zone or being put in the right situation coming out of the backfield sometimes, and it's using his traits alone to get open, which you can do a lot of the time in college, but in the NFL you need the dynamism in your route running and the fluidity to run those routes, and the routes I've seen him run that could be considered NFL routes, they're not crisp, they're not sudden, they're just basically stopping where he is and hoping he's in space, which again in college a lot of the time he is. He has very reliable hands, which was a pleasant surprise, and again he is a very dangerous yak threat. yak meaning yards after the catch, in case anyone hasn't heard that phrase before. He's dangerous with the ball in his hands, and I do think there's some potential to think he could run routes at a higher level, because he's clearly dynamic, but some of these guys just don't have the flexibility in their ankles and their hips. As dynamic as they are going forward, it's a different type of athleticism. So now we get on to Travis Hunter, who is my number one of this group so far. I was not expecting to be saying that. I wasn't even sure if I was supposed to be taking him seriously as a receiver, because he seems to be a better cornerback from what I've heard. And let me start off by saying I'm not the biggest fan of this whole Colorado thing. The Shedeur Sanders and his dad Deion Sanders, obviously a icon of the sport, but I've watched Shedeur Sanders on film and there's no way he's going to work in the NFL. And the offense isn't helping him. This offense isn't good. I believe they brought in a new offensive coordinator for next year, but there were plays this year where I swear there was just no plan, and this shows in Travis Hunter's film as well. Plays like this where he seems to be sort of just running around aimlessly trying to get open, or like this where he literally runs into his other receiver. Like, have you guys not practiced this play before? And then Shedeur Sanders tracks it up. Very NFL stuff here. But just as it pertains to Travis Hunter and his transition to the NFL, it's stuff like this that he really needs to work on, and will do. It's easily fixable. If he does want to play receiver, this is how I'm ranking him. I'm doing it as though he wanted to go down the receiver route. He would need to start to pick up some understanding of the position, like on routes like this where he is actually sort of drifting in the wrong direction as he makes his cut, where he really needs to be pulling up into this space, which is what creates the separation. And then here's another example of what I'm speaking about. I won't show you every single play where I saw this because it's a common theme, but the reason I have Travis Hunter at 1 is because I actually saw very silky route running ability. He clearly has the flexibility I'm speaking about when I say Luther Burden lacks this sort of thing. Travis Hunter can really twist and bend and change direction, and it's very smooth, it's very silky, and he really looks to me like if he did want to play receiver and he picked up on some of the things that he needs to, he can really get open. And by the way, he is very dangerous after the catch. I haven't heard a peep about him after the catch for some reason. I think maybe because stats like his yak per reception, meaning the average amount of yards he's picking up after he receives the ball, that number for him is actually very low because he's not being asked to do that. He's not being put in positions where he's coming out of the backfield solely for the purpose of creating something with the ball in his hands the way that Luther Burden is. But Travis Hunter can really make someone miss. He's very sudden with the ball in his hands. He's not crazy explosive, but reliable bringing the ball in, could become a very reliable route runner like I'm saying, and dangerous after the catch. That to me adds up to a sort of late first round type of guy in terms of projecting him, and this wasn't the best group I've ever looked at. I'm hoping that as I get to the rest of this class I'm going to see some gems, and probably when I watch Travis Hunter's cornerback tape I'll see that he's going to be a cornerback because he seems to have the skill set of a very good cornerback. But that's the video. This is my 4 so far. I hope you enjoyed it. We'll be back with cornerbacks in the next video coming very soon, and I will see you next time.